All right, welcome folks to our Apsona training series. We are going to be focusing the next few sessions on filtering and reporting in Epsona. We're going to be starting our foundational training today in session 1. We're going to talk a little bit kind of high level about objects in Salesforce and how they relate to each other and some of the key features there. And then we're going to introduce you to Epsona and the filtering abilities that Epsona has. So real quick about Epsona, if you're new to the tool as a whole, Epsona in Hindi means gold. So we like to call ourselves the golden app. And many customers agree. Epsona has become a very essential tool for many admins in the Salesforce world. Many people, one of my favorite quotes is literally this: I don't Salesforce as a verb unless I have Epsona. People love the tool and what it can provide them in terms of their efficiency in Salesforce. We've been around since 2009 on the App Exchange since 2011. We've got thousands of customers, and this tool just continues to surprise me, and it just continues to deliver amazing little gems of admin goodness to the folks that use it. We are a browser-based tool. We are data model agnostic. We can work with any customer standard object that's in Salesforce, which makes it a very flexible tool. And we've been used by a lot of big organizations throughout the various verticals out there. Okay, so like I said, we're going to start out today with some foundational stuff. So what I'd like to talk about first is just a little bit about Salesforce and the objects in Salesforce and how they relate to each other. And I put some key terms on here because I want to build our library of knowledge and kind of our lexicon, because we're going to use a lot of these terms as we go deeper into reporting. And the concepts behind these terms actually are really important for strong reporting skills. So here we go. So in Salesforce, it's referred to as a relational database. So, you have different records that represent different things. You've got accounts, you've got contacts, opportunities, and they all represent different real world concepts, and they relate to each other. They have relationships, multiple relationships to different records in the system. Some of you may or may not have heard the term ERD, or the entity relationship diagram. This is a tool that people use to explain those relationships. I have here a scary diagram that none of us have to understand, but this is kind of a typical ERD, an entity relationship diagram, that talks about how the different objects in Salesforce relate to each other. And the reason I'm showing it to you is not to scare you or not to confuse you, just to kind of start to kind of poke into the concepts that we're going to be talking more deeply about as we continue to work on reporting. So some of the things that you're going to be familiar with, hey, here's an account right here. Everybody knows what an account is in Salesforce. Everybody knows what an opportunity is in Salesforce. And what I want to just kind of drive home here is that these opportunities have a relationship to the account. This little symbol right here with the 3 little lines means that there can be many opportunities. You can see 3 little lines means that there could be many opportunities that are related to, via this little line, an account. So an account can live in Salesforce and it can have multiple opportunities that relate to it. Another term that we use here is a parent and child object. So an account is the parent and the opportunity is the child. The account is the parent and the contact is the child. So you have child records and they are related up to a parent record. I know that for some of you, this is super basic stuff, but I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page. Another way to describe this relationship is a one-to-many relationship. So you have one account that has many opportunities under it. Excuse me, I'm trying to get back to my drawing. So one account with many opportunities, one-to-many. So these are just different terms that are thrown around to kind of talk about the relationship between different records in Salesforce. You also have records that act as kind of an in-between record. Some of the terms that you may have heard is a many-to-many relationship or a junction object. What that typically means is something like this down here. This is an opportunity product. So underneath an opportunity, there could be multiple products that opportunity represents. And that opportunity product has a relationship up to a product. And you can see that this square here has has the little triangle symbol here and here. That means it's a many-to-many relationship. There could be many opportunity products that are relating to an opportunity and a product at the same time. That's a little deeper than we necessarily need to go, but I just want to start to familiarize you with these terms. Sorry, I'm just trying to, there we go. Okay, and how do these objects relate to each other? Typically, it is through a lookup field. So if we look at Salesforce directly, here's a contact record, and I've got a field that tells me, whoops, that this contact is related to its parent, the account right here, through this field. So this is the magic field. I like to call it like a window into the account, because via this field, we can kind of like go through and get to data on the account since they have this relationship. So lookup fields are the key to the relationships between objects. And a small technical detail. So like I said, I'm going to sprinkle in some more complex stuff with the basic stuff. When you export a report from Salesforce and it's a contact report and you include the account name field, you're going to get Burlington Textiles Corporation of America. You're going to get a text value in your export. But on the back end in Salesforce, this is not words. This is an ID. I'm going to use a little tool that here's another kind of like more complex thing that I just want to sprinkle in here for the admins that are thirsty for this kind of stuff. There's a Chrome extension that I'm about to use, and I'll show you the link in a second. It's called Salesforce Inspector, and it shows me the back end of this record. So I'm looking at this record, and when I go to the account field, the lookup field that I was just showing you that said Burlington Textiles, this is the real value that's in there. It's an ID, and this is how Salesforce is linking these records together. And as we go deeper into reports, you'll see how understanding these concepts helps you to run reports faster and to just get better at the world of kind of creating these important reports. So these lookup fields are very key. They have an ID in the back and text in the front. Let's go back to our slides. All right, one other kind of more technical thing I'm going to introduce you to is the schema builder. So the schema builder is a great thing to say. I just love it, schema builder. But essentially, it's kind of an ERD within Salesforce. It's a way to visualize your relationships in Salesforce, and it's fairly live. So if you're an admin and you have access to setup, you can go to the, let me actually back up one screen. You can go to the setup tool, the setup tab here, and you can just start typing in schema builder. And when you click into it, it's going to give you a visual representation of how all of your records are related. And the reason I bring this up, you know, I'm trying to not get too technical, but the reason I'm bringing this up is because sometimes it's really hard to interpret how all of your records are related to each other. And this is a great way to do it. So you can see on the side here, you can type in any object that you want to see in any other object and just start stacking them up, and they'll start to pop up on your screen. And I've included some standard objects that most people are familiar with. So we have our account that we're used to seeing here. We can see that contacts have this many one-to-many relationship via that little symbol. So many contacts can be related to a single account. Many opportunities can be related to a single account. You can see that little lookup icon there. And then we have opportunity contact roles. This is that junction object I referred to that has a connection to both an opportunity above it and a contact. And you'll see when we start getting into reporting why it's important to know that this is a junction object, because it's going to give you access to both contact and opportunity data when we start to get into Epsona reporting. And these are other examples of, there's another junction object. So if you're confused about your data model, one of the kind of key terms that I hadn't referenced yet, data model, if you're confused about how your org is set up, or a custom app that you put in that's just really confusing, come on over to the schema builder, start typing in the name of the various objects, pop them onto the screen, and you'll see how they're related. And it's a pretty valuable tool once you start to use it. And if you click on one of these boxes and start to scroll, you'll actually see which field is responsible for the relationship. So this is a funky one. Here's an account that's related to itself. That's crazy, but that's because accounts can have parents accounts, right? And that parent account is a lookup field to the same object. And so you can see not only like that there is a relationship, but you can see which field is responsible to it because it kind of moves with you. So there's some kind of deeper stuff that I wanted to sprinkle in for the folks that that can benefit from that. Let's move on past here. Okay. I'm going to say a couple more technical things, and then we're going to go to a more general tour of filtering. SOQL queries is another term that you may have heard and may not know what it means. Technically, it stands for Salesforce Object Query Language. But the reason I bring it up is because Apsona is an app that is a browser-based app. You can look at it in Salesforce, but it technically lives outside of Salesforce, and it has to communicate to Salesforce using SOQL queries. So it builds statements to say, show me all the accounts that have opportunities that are above $100, blah, blah, blah. And it builds it in a technical statement and then shows you the results of that SOQL query. And it's important just to know that Epsona has to use the SOQL query language to communicate to Salesforce. And very rarely there's limitations to the SOQL queries to what they can do. It's a language that Salesforce built and it has certain limitations. And so sometimes you may hit up against an issue of like, oh, I can't do this. And it might be because Epsona has to use SOQL queries and communicate to Salesforce externally. And so it's just kind of just another thing that I think is helpful to know for folks. So I think the key takeaway that I want you to get just from this general intro to some of these terms and the object relationships is that knowing your object relationships and knowing your data model is going to vastly increase your report building speed, your efficiency. It's going to reduce your frustration because you're going to understand, oh, I can get to this field because I have a connection through this lookup field, and it all starts to make sense once you start to digest it and understand it. And this down here is, before I forget, I want to put a bunch of links in our chat now that I have everybody present and they're going to see everything. I'm going to paste a bunch of links in the chat. They're going to be referred to at various times. Let me just do this in the right way. And if folks are watching this after the fact on YouTube, we'll try to put this in the description. So I just put a bunch of links in the chat for everybody. The one that I'm referring to now is called Salesforce Inspector Chrome extension. So as I just kind of demoed previously, you can use this cool extension that's free to like look into the back end of records. It shows a little tab over here, and it's Salesforce Ben. If you know of that website, they have kind of a regular blog. Somebody did an article recently, and this Salesforce Inspector was one of their, it's like top 23 admin tools that you can't live without. Salesforce Inspector is in there. And guess what else is in there? Apsona. That's right. Apsona was in their top 23 list. I think it was like number 2 or 3. So I highly encourage people to get Salesforce Inspector. Okay, let's jump back into it. Let's move on to the next slide here. All right, so let's kind of back up and start talking a little bit more about Epsona and filtering now that we've kind of established some object language stuff. So in Salesforce, if you're running a report and you're going to run a filter, you'll get about 9 filters here on the left side that you can see. If you are running a report or just trying to filter a list in Epsona, you're going to get 18 filters, twice the amount. And we're going to talk a little bit about them coming up in just a second. So Epsona, it's designed to like help you move faster and be more efficient. So it gives you more filters to work with. All right, so we're going to jump into Epsona directly and start kind of talking. Actually, what I want to do first here is show one more. Oh, I don't think I got that slide in. That's okay. All right, so we're going to do just a little surface tour of filters in Epsona. I'm going to not go too deep because taking time to describe every of the 18 filters is going to take a long time, and some of them are pretty obvious, but I want to just kind of give you a lay of the land here. So I'm in Epsona. I'm in just the all accounts tab. I'm not in a report or anything yet. And I have various ways to create filters or to filter my list. One of the simplest ways, without even getting into anything fancy, is that when you're on a list view in Epsona, you have some fields that are being displayed, and you can just literally start typing, oh, look at our filters are popping up right here. I can just start typing Burlington and say it starts with, and it's going to filter my list down to whatever that field filter is that you added in. And then if I click this little blue button, it's going to remove it and bring me back to the full list. So depending on the fields you have chosen to put on your layout, you can just filter it by just start typing in values. If you're trying to find a certain, oh, I'm seeing that people can't copy the chat items. Okay, I'll see if my coworkers can help solve that in the background. Otherwise, we're going to be doing some follow-up emails, so we'll make sure that people get those links. Apologize for that. You may or may not be familiar with our tabular view. I have grown to love this in recent years. Tabular view is a way to view records similarly as a list, but you get some added features. You can really quickly change the fields that you have by changing these field sets so that you get different fields appear for analyzing data. You can save those various fields in field sets. So you could say like, oh, I'm looking at accounts, but from the accounting department's perspective. So I want to see a certain set of fields. And now I'm going to look at accounts from the marketing department's perspective. So I have another field set that has different fields that are important to them. So you can set field sets, which is a sort of filtering. And then, of course, like I just showed, you can start to just type in values here, and that will start to filter things. So that's a really cool way to look at your data, is through tabular views. And so now that's kind of one concept of filtering, just literally putting in some values and trying to whittle down your list. Up here, you've got a search section. There's some fields that are automatically checked here. And you can just start to say, okay, let me actually get out of this filter here. I hit reset to kind of empty that out. And I just start typing Burlington. And if I do that, same thing, I get my value here. But I can also say, well, I do want to search by a field, but it's not listed anywhere. So I can click more options. And by doing that, let me actually reset here, get this out of here. And I can say more options. And what it's going to do, and let me replicate this better. This is what you typically start with. You say, okay, I want to search, but by a different field, click more options. Now you get a true filter bar here. And now I have access to all of the account fields, and I can start filtering on any field that I want here. So I can just say account number starts with, does not start with, ends with, etc. But
Chad,
not only,
Chad, sometimes you move so fast because you live in this space. How did you get from the initial page where you started with accounts to that accounts tabular view?
Oh, absolutely. So if I am just on all accounts, basically the answer is right here. So whenever you click on a tab, you've got some options of how to view your data. What we refer to as the console view is when you click on all whatever objects. So now I'm in all accounts, and I see a list on the left. If I click on one of these, I get a detail tab of that actual record on the right, and I can edit it. I can see related records to it. I get access to tons of data just by going to a console view, clicking on a record, and then being able to scroll through that record and see related data. Tabular view is also here for every object. When I click on that, I don't get the detail tab as I did on the other page, but I do get other features. Like I said, I can have various field sets that I can switch back and forth between. I can pop down here and I can see the related records. I can add related records. So a ton of access to data also, just a different way to view the data. And tabular views can actually be used in other parts of Salesforce outside of the Epsona screen. Did that answer the question? All right.
Thanks, Chad.
Yeah, and I am moving fast. Kind of part of the goal is to have this on a recording that people can refer to later and kind of slow it down if they need to. I just want to fit a lot of stuff in. Okay. So if I come back to all accounts, I've got this ability to search on a field, do it really quickly, or hit more options and open up a little filter section. So now let's say I have a filter that I like, and I can add terms. I can add multiple filter terms. So let's say that I want to say account name is starts with Burlington. And I want to say, or maybe I want to say that that the account has an opportunity that's over $100. So if I have an account that has an opportunity over $100, I also want it to show up. So that's one of the other beautiful things here about our filter terms, is that you not only get access to the source object that you're starting from, but every object that's related one step or above or one step below, you have access to that object and the fields in it. So as I talked about those relationships, and we have a child-parent relationship, If I scroll down to opportunity, you can see there's a little star here. That star means that it's a child object to whatever object you're looking at. So I'm on account and I have the opportunities under that account. I get access to the opportunities under that account and their fields in order to filter on them. So I can say amount, amount is greater than 100 for at least one record. So here I can say, I want to find accounts that are that have opportunities that are greater than 100 just for at least one record. Now, the next step is to consider your filter logic. So I have 1 and 2 here. I'm going to change this and to or. And what that's going to tell us is I'm either going to get any account that starts with Burlington, or I'm going to get any account that has at least one opportunity that's greater than 100. And when I search for that, I'm going to get 13 accounts. That means that one of them here is the Burlington. The rest of them have opportunities that are greater than 100. So I'm going to just very quickly kind of finish off the description of these by just highlighting a couple that might make less sense. And then I'm going to kind of move on to some of the more sophisticated stuff here. Starts with, does not start with, fairly obvious. Ends with, that's not in Salesforce. We got our good old equals and not equals. Is among is basically like saying, I want to find accounts that are maybe Burlington, maybe they're Dixon Place, maybe they're Edge Communications, and I could say is among, and then I can type in all those values, comma separated, and get all of them. So sometimes you have a set of values that you're trying to find, and you can use is among. You've got contains.
Can I jump off that piggyback one? One
Yeah.
of my favorite ways to use sort of exports and imports quickly is the is among works for commas or line breaks. So if you have an Excel file and you just want to grab, 100, 200, roughly about 900 up to 1,000 of a value in a copy paste, you can go copy that, string of values in a column and then bring it here, click on is among, paste it into that filter string, that filter box, and it will respect those line breaks as separators. This is a really easy way to like quickly just look at your information, see a campaign response, or you've got maybe another Excel file that has a bunch of email addresses or account names or anything, copy, drop those in as a paste, and the is among filter works really well.
Yes, that is such a good point. That was going to be one of my little gems at the end, but I'll bust it out early. So we have a export here that you just happen to have. It's got a bunch of account IDs, and I just want to get to those records. Like Justin said, you can literally copy these cells, say account ID equals, or sorry, is among, and paste them in, hit search, and now you've found those accounts with all of those IDs. It's such an amazing time-saving shortcut. The fact that you can just paste in IDs or paste in any value, but oftentimes it's due to like an export that you want to then get back into in Salesforce. You paste those in and you get them. Thank you for bringing that up. That's a really good idea there.
We have some questions about what if your values have commas in the text?
I think, let's see. I do know that contains can allow, well, Justin, you might have to help me with that. If the values have commas in them.
Yeah, so you're sort of splitting the difference on some of the way that the syntax operates as it's passed into the API. I don't have the knowledge on hand, but I think there might be some ways if you introduce quotes to introduce sort of quoting around a particular set of values, that would then provide a harder sort of barrier around a value, i.e. Chad's awesome haircut. I can't think of like another comma separated value, Chad, comma, Rob's business acne organization, commas included in that string of text. But you want to keep it as its own string of text for searching. If experimenting with single quotes or double quotes does not work, please send in a support request and we'll be searching at that answer.
She said that she's tried double quotes and single quotes and it doesn't look like it worked.
Interesting, yeah.
Okay.
I'm gonna go do some research then. That sounds great. Thanks, Carolyn, for raising it.
Yeah, we definitely would love to kind of figure that out in more detail. Okay, I'm going to move along in order to kind of leave some time for Q&A. So one thing you can do once, well, let's create a filter. And here it is. I've got so let's say that this is a really important list of accounts I always want to come back to. I'm going to save this. I'm going to say important accounts. And there we have it. Now what happens if I get rid of this, kind of like try to reset us here. Okay, well, this happens to be all the accounts I have in my dev org, so it looks the same. But if you're starting from an empty list here, you now have that saved filter available up here in this filter section. So now you can call upon that saved filter at any time. And if I just click it, it automatically loads it and searches for those and pulls them up. So saving filters is another really great thing, and they're kept right here in this list. And they're available to everyone. You can see yours in a certain order, but these filters are available to anybody that's an Epsona user. And then I wanted to say, you can also kind of review the filters that you have for any object that you're in by going to Tools and clicking Filters right here. It's another way just to kind of get to those filters. And I think that is probably good as like a general, very high level overview of just kind of like how the filters work at a basic level. And what I want to do is talk a little bit more about some of the important kind of nuances of Epsona that make filters super powerful. I think I'm going to skip filter logic because I think probably the majority of folks know in general how to use that. But whenever you do pull up a filter, you are able to add terms, and then you get this filter logic window, and you can start to customize it to say this and this or that, and really fine tune it. I want to talk a little bit about quantified filters in Epsona. So people are used to seeing the cross filter in a Salesforce report. So for example, if I'm in an account report, I can say that I want to only see accounts right here, accounts with whatever contacts of a certain quality. That's considered a cross filter in Salesforce. So Epsona has the same thing. I think it has a lot more to offer to the user, and we call them quantified filters. And so if I come back to Epsona, as I showed you earlier, you have access to every object that's a child object to the account. And remember, this star means a child object. So this means that all of these objects have a lookup to account. So I can say contact who has a name that starts with Chad. For at least one record, I can also say for all records. So if I'm trying to say, I don't want to look at any accounts who don't have opportunities under $100, I can say that I only want to see accounts with opportunities that have an amount that's above $100 for all their opportunities. And then it's going to be a different kind of filter. And I can also say no records that have whatever criteria I'm putting on. So you have a really powerful way to filter your parent record by the children record. That's called a quantified filter. I want to make sure I get all the details of that. And there's plenty more to talk about quantified filters. We're going to get into more of those when we get into reporting. As I mentioned, you can save a filter. And one of the other really cool things about Epsona is that you can add a term and call upon that filter within your object. So I can say, I want to find all the accounts whose ID is in filter. This is a special term that pops up when you pull the ID of an object. And then it shows all the filters that you have available for that object. So if I were in the contact tab and I start to create a filter and I say, I want to see contacts whose accounts are in the filter, important accounts, search. Now I've got a list of contacts based on an account filter. And that is just such a powerful tool. And these are called nested filters. So you can take a filter, you could stick it into another filter along with other search terms and really zoom in on the data that you're looking for. So nested filters is an Epsona feature that is just extremely powerful. And before I forget and get too far, I want to highlight all the things I'm talking about today are in the links that I chatted, and we'll make sure that people get that access. But if you were to just go to Epsona, click on support documentation, this is our kind of one-stop shop for all of our documentation. And these two pages here are really key. So searching and filtering is going to have almost everything that I've talked about today and more. And they're all kind of categorized here on the left. You can quickly go to them by clicking on the left side. You can also search for keywords. So if I go back to this initial page and I want to say, I need to learn more about quantified filters, hit enter. It shows all the articles that have it. And the most relevant one is usually in the top two, two to five. And so I can click on like this one, and this is going to talk more about quantified filters in this article. And you can of course just do a Control F to really find out where it's being referred to. I highly encourage people to read through this searching and filtering article. It doesn't take too long, but it has a lot of interesting stuff that's really relevant. There's another article here that is also on the support page that talks more about like saving filters, making sure that people can use them. And it's also, again, very, very powerful. So I encourage you all to look up that article as well. Okay. Let's see. I'm going to, I think, keep moving forward a little bit at a faster pace to get through some of this stuff. As we talked about earlier, we showed the trick of being able to take a list of IDs from a CSV and paste in those IDs into a filter and find records that way. You can use wildcard searches. So in our documentation, we have some characters you can plug in. So if you only have a few characters that you have access to that you want to search on, you can say, if I want to find anybody with the name Chad or Charles, I can type CHA with a %, and it's going to find anybody that has those characters plus anything else. So wildcard searching is a great tool to expand your ability to filter. I will talk very quickly about dynamic date filters, and I will talk really quickly about this one. And then I think we're going to be close to the point where we can switch over to Q&A. So let's just really quickly look at some date filters here. We'll go to opportunity, and I'm going to get out of reports and go back to all opportunities here. So if I wanted to search on close date, first off, you have the ability to decide what part of the date are you looking for. So I'm going to choose the just standard date. And I have my different options that are specific to dates here. So if I say in range, I can choose a static set of days, months, quarters, years to search within. I can also use relative terms and say the last 2 years up until this year. So this will roll with you. This filter, if you save it, will always apply to the last 2 years. You can also say, I want my close date to equal, and now you have some more relative dates. I could either say equal a fixed date, equal today, equal this year, equal that year. You have all these options here. So you have a lot of ways to create dynamic filters on dates so that those filters don't decay over time, but they stay relevant to your time frame. Let's talk about existing and not existing. I think this is a really cool concept here. Let's kind of clear this filter. Let's say that I want to find accounts that don't have any opportunities. I just want to look for accounts that haven't paid for anything yet. So I'm on an account list. I'm gonna go down to my opportunities, and I'm going to say opportunity ID does not exist. So what this is saying is I'm looking at accounts, but I'm basing my filter on its child records, the opportunity, and I want to find accounts where there's no opportunities. So the ID of an opportunity doesn't even exist because they don't have any. And I'm not sure if I have that. I don't have that. Now let's say, okay, I want to find accounts that have any opportunity. So an ID that exists, and I'm going to probably get all 13 again because I think they all have opportunities. So this is a powerful one if you want to try to exclude certain records or include records that do or do not have child records underneath them. Calling upon the ID of that child record and saying it exists or doesn't exist is a great way to do so. Okay. I think I'm going to hold off on that one. I can probably address that with reports. And I'll say one of the limitations of SOQL queries, and I think it's often maybe not 100% true in Salesforce directly, but long text fields and rich text fields can be so data consuming that they're not allowed to be searched upon in SOQL queries. And so Epsona won't have access to like the description field in terms of filtering. It can show a field in a report, let's say, but it won't have access to the field itself to say, I want to find an account that has, Chad Harris in the description. That's not allowed in SOQL queries. So that's it's not going to be possible in Epsona. So that's one of the gotchas. Okay, I've moved really fast. I've included a ton of stuff. I think I'm going to slow down now. And I'll just say that if you're interested in learning more in general, we are always welcoming emails. If you have a sales inquiry, we have sales at Epsona. If you have a support inquiry, support at Epsona. We do hold office hours twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. This is the bit.ly link, and you're always welcome to join those and ask more specific questions. And as I showed you, we have a very extensive support documentation with the ability to search keywords, and it almost always has the answer you need. And just to get it on the video, here's the direct URLs, and we'll make sure that these are in the appropriate places for people. Okay, I think I am going to stop there, and we will hold time for QA.